Welcome to Conversations with Kay. I'm Kay Ryder. And every week I talk with Vermonters who are leaders in the fields of government, healthcare, education, the arts, and community life. My guests are two people, Liz and Bill Metcalfe, who have brought a lot of beautiful music to the state of Vermont. And I'm going to talk with them about their lives together as a married couple and the music they have made. And also, welcome to my radio listeners, WBTV LP at 99.3 FM, Mondays at 11 a.m. Welcome, Bill and Liz.
Hi,
Thank
Kay.
you. It's a great pleasure to have the two of you here on my show. And we're going to talk about your musical careers and your lives together. And did you play instruments when you were growing up?
I played the cello in high school.
Really?
Uh-huh.
And
I was very glad I did because it was a good experience as it turned out.
And then you became a pianist.
I started being a pianist first, but the high school instrument in the orchestra, I played cello.
Great. And Bill?
I attempted the piano when I was, I don't know, between the ages of 7 and 12 or something like that. And that was it. They were playing baseball out in the field in front of the house. I was going. So.
Happens all the time.
That's true.
What kinds of music did you first love? What kinds of music did you first love when you were growing up?
I guess orchestral music I loved because my parents played recordings a lot and some operas. So there are two operas I know very well because I heard them a lot when I was growing up. But eventually I came to really like a lot of the composers who wrote great music for the piano, which I ended up playing a lot of.
And Bill?
That's really hard to answer because so many of them you really do enjoy. And Mozart, Bach, I liked all of that. Handel, sure. But I started going down a stream of English, 20th century English music for orchestra or choir or what have you. And that kept me interested for quite a while. There was a period when I memorized Rigoletto, but I think that didn't do me any good. So
Well, I was an opera nut. I listened to the Metropolitan Opera on the radio. I listened to the Metropolitan Opera on the radio, from the time I was 10 years old. So I really loved opera, and I really loved some of the orchestral music too. I like Mozart. I really like Mozart. Where did you go to college?
both went to the University of Toronto to a subdivision called Victoria College, which is right in Toronto.
Okay.
Yes, major arts college as it was, and started as a church college, I guess, but soon got away from that, and now it's Victoria University, actually, in the University of Toronto.
Mm-hmm. Where did you meet?
French class.
I was expecting some music class. But
yeah, I know. Well, French class. It's not too romantic. We had a romantic first date, though.
Oh.
Yes.
Let's hear about that.
You confess.
Well, considering what we ended up doing, it was really a prophetic sort of date, because we went to hear Messiah in the big hall in Toronto with the Toronto Symphony and an enormous choir, probably 95 people or so.
Very big.
Yes. Called the Toronto Mendelssohn Choir, but they did, every composer.
Right.
Did Messiah every year, just like lots of other choirs.
And you had a good evening, and you both said, well, let's have another date, or something like that.
I can't remember what happened last week. I don't know how I can be expected to. We had a good time. I thought it was awfully long. I do remember that, and there are ways of fixing that. Mm-hmm. Mainly play everything faster. It comes out as a shorter piece.
Yeah. Well, did you have careers before you came to Vermont?
I had what I don't know that you'd call it a career, but I played a lot of things in, especially in a big organization called the Kiwanis Music Festival, which was competitions in every possible sort of music, and not just pianists, but piano classes for concertos or for just Bach preludes and fugues or that kind of thing. And every year for a lot of years I did that. You got graded and had very serious comments made about them. And I played some solo concerts, and I played a concerto with the Toronto Symphony when I was 12.
Ooh.
But then when I went to college, I ditched the music major fairly quickly and ended up in modern languages and literature. And then after graduating from college, I went right back to music eventually. So this was...
I was just drifting about, wishing I were playing first base for somebody. And I was in the Modern History, Modern Languages honors course. So that's where we met, in this fairly rapidly advancing French grammar courses.
And why did you come to Vermont?
Thereby lies not one, but thereby lies several tales. I guess I came here because there was not a single job in all of Canada in the subfield of history that I was working in. And I went up to London, Ontario for an interview at their university there. And I would have loved to have had that job. And finally, at the end of the day, at the end of the interview, he said, "Well, Mr. Metcalfe, I don't think we're going to be inviting you." He said, "We had a good day and a good this and that," trying to make me feel better about it all. But he said, "We really wanted somebody to teach American history anyway." And I thought, boy, I hope he's paying the bills for this little trip. But then it turned out I moved on after that.
And Liz, of course, you came to Vermont, and did you have a family at that point or not?
Not at first.
Okay.
We got married between our last exam in our last year of undergraduate college, and when we had the graduation ceremony, we got married between those two dates because we had to, in order for me to get a green card, I had to apply early enough, so we had to move in September for his job in Vermont. So that was very quick then.
Now, Bill, we're going to talk about your musical career in Vermont now. Now, you were a busy professor.
I was.
But you and Liz, both of you, were in the Vermont Baroque Ensemble. You were a founder of the Vermont Mozart Festival, perhaps the founder. And you founded the Oriana Singers. And you also played a lot of Gilbert and Sullivan.
Yes,
my father loved Gilbert and Sullivan, so I was so glad when Gilbert and Sullivan came to our part of Vermont. Now, all these groups that you were involved with, setting them up and all that, did you set them up because you felt Vermont, our part of Vermont, needed more classical music?
I was trying to finish up a PhD dissertation, and I pretty much didn't know what I was doing other than that and what was happening around town until I finally got that out of the way. But I did feel that Burlington was a little bit on the short side for good classical music ensembles. Basically, before the choral union started, which Jim Chapman started, that was a wonderful choir, and it showed everybody up there how good a choir could be live, and was terrific. Before then, it was just the Lane series, and UVM would do a concert with their concert choir, and St. Mike's would do a concert with Bill Tortolano's concert choir. So it was a bit dull, and I just decided that I wanted to be, as they always say, at the right place at the right time, and get into the idea of Oriana Singers. So I did, much to my horror, it lasted 37 years. So I was director for that whole time.
Well, let's talk about the Mozart Festival a little bit. That was a wonderful addition to the musical life of Vermont.
Yeah, it was. It was another idea which came at the right place at the right time, not without its difficulties, some of them major. But I guess I get the honor of being called the co-founder, which is true enough. Jim Chapman and I and Jack Trebethick, who ran the Lane series, and we all got together with Mel Kaplan, and it was Mel's idea, but many of us sustained it, many townspeople, many people throughout the university, and that was a pretty good show. It lasted a long time.
It was a marvelous edition. I still miss it every summer.
Yeah.
When I get to mid-July, I start thinking I have to, get my tickets for the Mozart Festival, and it was a great edition, and you also brought to the Mozart Festival Gilbert and Sullivan, one of my loves in life because my father loved him.
Well, if you look at the New York Times, practically every month you'll find at least one or two references to some Gilbertian lyric. Yeah. And it's going to get to the point where the people who use the thing as a joke have no idea what they're joking about.
Absolutely, absolutely. Liz, you were going to say something.
I began to realize one reason for the Gilbert and Sullivan here, and when you asked where we met, it was in French class, but we met every week for quite a few years after our freshman year, doing Gilbert and Sullivan at Victoria University, where Bill was eventually the conductor and I was the rehearsal pianist, and something didn't change for a long time after that.
Great. I think Gilbert and Sullivan is great fun. Like you said, the illusions and the things that people aren't going to realize what it is anymore. The jokes, if you will.
That's a danger.
Jokes. Well, however, we've had a lot of the royal family lately, so I think people could probably put one and two together. Yeah. Do you like to conduct?
Sure. What I like, and it takes a while to figure this out when you're doing other things as well. I like to be in the middle of the music. Mm-hmm. If the music does not appeal, the likelihood is the conductor's not going to bring off a very good performance. If he doesn't like it, it has to do it because, there's so many ways you do it. But if you're doing a program that you like and music that you like, you better not get yourself lost in the atmosphere because you can be quite taken away, and it's fun.
Yeah, good. Plus you're in charge.
Yeah, you play music. I have, as I just said, nothing in terms of musical training. All these guys are New York pros whom we hired, Mel brought up, or else they gradually were more and more Vermont players. And, you can't be an idiot in front of these people. They really know it better than you do in some respects. But it sometimes needs a conductor to bring those things into focus together.
Right. Liz, you've had your own musical career since coming to Vermont. You've been on the faculty of the University of Vermont teaching piano and harpsichord?
Yes, and theory and sort of chamber music repertory and music by women courses and a lot of different things, but basically lessons and then some of the basic theory courses.
Now you have played yourself. You've been a professional musician and you're teaching. What are the big differences between teaching and playing music yourself?
Well, when you think of the teaching part, I guess it involves a lot of kinds of skills on the part of both the teacher and the student, because you have to do technique, the really basic stuff. Even maybe more basic is reading music and interpreting, the kinds of things that composers write into the music, and the styles of music, and sort of the discipline of practicing and how to practice and how to get along with people in chamber ensembles and things. But in a way, the most important thing in the end is that the student has to eventually really love what they're playing and love the music, and not just what they're playing, but in general. And then they always talk about putting yourself into the music, and that's of course a big part. And so teachers have to be taskmasters and purveyors of information, but inspiration in many, many ways. And so all of that is very different from playing, but playing, it's what you love to do yourself. If you're like me, I mean, I like all the kinds of chamber music, and small ensembles to big ones, and playing with orchestras is amazing, and playing with just one other person is amazing, and they're all different, but the music makes a difference. And if you can come after concerts, I realize how many times I've said, after somebody says, "Oh, this piece was wonderful," and you think the music was so great, it was so much fun, and I guess that's the right kind of thing that makes the difference. I mean, I didn't teach or play much when our children were really little, and I started into it very, in a small way again, just with some teaching, and then got hired by UVM, and then did teach for a long time.
Now, you were one of the founders of the Vermont Contemporary Music Ensemble. Why do we need special groups to play contemporary music? I know that the orchestras sneak one in once in a while, and everybody says, "What's this?" But why do we need this?
Well, I think what you described sounds like when the Vermont Contemporary Music Festival was started by Steve Klimowski. He thought that they really did need a voice to do more contemporary music than would ever be programmed at that time on most programs. As you say, they would sneak in a little bit and make sure that they didn't do it at the end of the program, because they knew everybody would leave before they got to it. But also to encourage composers, and there were many, many composers in Vermont, and a lot of them have written commissioned pieces for the VCME, and a lot of them just write a lot of stuff, and Steve would choose to play them. But there's also, of course, a very important lot of music written by all great composers that at one time was contemporary. It isn't now, but some people still talk about it as though Stravinsky was contemporary, and think When the Rite of Spring was a long time ago.
Long time ago.
But they've really succeeded. I think they've built up a good audience and a recognition of it, and people have played more of it, so that the ability of people to play really contemporary music now, serious contemporary music, has really improved.
Interesting concept, isn't it? Everything every piece of music that was ever written, it was contemporary at one time. I mean, you forget that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's fun to think about that in some ways. Just let's talk a little bit more about the two of you together.
Children.
Now
they're very tall.
You have been together for many musical evenings, with Bill conducting and Liz playing piano or harpsichord. Do you ever disagree on the way something should be played? And if so, who wins? Or whose opinion is judged the best?
I think we both say the same answer, wouldn't we? Yes, there are lots of times that we don't necessarily agree, but...
and they run from something relatively small and simple, how to phrase thus or so, to the famous one which everyone always cites, which is when Lenny Bernstein conducted the New York Philharmonic. Glenn Gould, the fabulous Glenn Gould, played Brahms' Concerto No. 1, and they really couldn't agree on the tempo. I mean, it was, they were both extreme men, and they were just, they recorded it. You could hear it at your corner store, but it's amazing.
No, it was
so you
really
come to a compromise.
Yeah, right.
We should give lessons to all these politicians.
Musicians could do that, I think. I think definitely one kind. It's one profession which perhaps should let's think about that.
Yeah.
Musical,
Yeah.
what should we call it? Musical psychiatric help for the,
Right.
for the politicians?
Yeah.
Good. What is the funniest thing that ever happened to you during a performance?
Yes, Bill's going to tell you about this.
Well, I'll take the first couple. The very first big performance with the Oriana Singers and the UVM Baroque Ensemble was a performance of the B minor Mass.
Well,
Probably the greatest choral work ever written. It certainly is in my mind.
well, with the big
We all got
orchestra.
ready. We were in the recital hall. Everybody came marching out on stage. I came out with a soloist, and I perhaps grinned at the audience and turned around and went, boom. Nobody had given the pitch.
And it starts with the choir
And it starts with
a real
everybody.
orchestra, not just the Baroque Ensemble. I mean, that's-
The other one is related, I mean by blood related. In the middle of Matthew Passion, he switches the work from one orchestra to the other. He uses two orchestras. And I had finished doing something and I was happy about it, and it turned and nothing was in the air. And it was the fact that I was in the wrong orchestra. And that was a little, fortunately everybody had a good laugh. The last thing you could tell quickly about Jill and
Oh, this was very early in the Baroque Ensemble, before the Vergennes Opera House was being used as a real concert venue. It was just a sort of a big empty space there upstairs in a building in Vergennes. And we were going to do a concert with the Baroque Ensemble, and Jill was going to sing a concert about, that's what I can't remember the piece of cats.
oh, it's called Schwarzkatz.
Oh, yes, anyway. And so just as we were about to start, a black cat walked right across the front of the singers, and the audience
You
just
could have hired it and
ripped
it
out
wouldn't have been any better than that.
the cat piece, and there was the cat, right?
Oh,
the
my.
Yeah.
Schwarzkatz.
You wonder if somebody encouraged that cat to do
Well,
that. Yeah, that's fine.
we did stop the piece and start again.
Yes. But we
Yeah.
did not have to do that with the whole tale of the B minor Mass. By some miracle, when Bill did this with no pitches, everybody came in and we just kept on going, didn't we? We didn't start it
Yeah.
again. No,
That's,
it was all right.
that's amazing.
It was amazing.
that the notes would be in their heads.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
It is amazing.
Because very few. Do a lot of people have perfect pitch?
Oh, I used to know the percentage. Yeah, quite a few people do if they're in the music world.
Yeah. But not
Of
a
the
lot.
great conductors,
Yeah.
though, you'll talk to quite a. There's been a study,
Right.
and it's not uniform by any means.
No.
So, if you have it, it's on the whole really much better for you. But that's not completely true either. It's a touchy thing, the whole business of perfect pitch.
Right. And do you have a favorite composer? I mean, someone who, like, it's the old, island story. If you on your ship went down and had music on the desert island, who would you want to listen to?
Who would you say? Well, I guess if I really had to name one, maybe I would say Bach. But in a way, it's, when I'm not near the girl I love the girl I'm near. It's whatever you're playing is sometimes your favorite. So it can switch around, but I guess Bach maybe in the end would be.
There were Bach and Mozart people and Beethoven people lurking on the edge, and you always, within those three, you pretty much can find everybody.
Right. Well, one composer I would want is Wagner, because I feel I could listen to The Ring endlessly, and I always find something different in the orchestra and in the voices, depending on who is singing it too.
Yeah, well.
So
that's-
I think that might be mine.
Yeah,
Might be
that's
mine.
interesting. Yeah.
And for our listeners on radio WBTV LP 99.3 FM, I'm talking with Bill and Liz Metcalfe, who have brought a lot of music to the state of Vermont. Getting back to what we're talking about, you have a son, Scott, who is a fine musician in Boston, Could you mention him briefly?
Yeah, well, he's, the group is called the Blue Heron Renaissance Choir. They've already given a small, short tour over in Europe and over to Brussels and over to London and Oxford. So he's doing pretty well.
Good, that's wonderful. Liz, what's special about his group?
It's partly because they do very early vocal music. We're talking about, 14th, 15th century especially. But they are all really expert singers in their own right, and it's a very variable size group, so that every concert they do might be a different group of singers or different number of singers. And the style and the interpretation, which is basically where Scott takes the lead in the teaching of the conducting of the choir. And sometimes he doesn't conduct, sometimes they do conduct at rehearsals, but they just sing on their own. But they're very wonderful about presenting the ideas of the music, and the way that they sing is quite individual and different. It's been commented on a lot. So. Sounds
great. You must be very proud of him. Now, we don't have much time left. Both of you are retired. I hope you'll have a nice, quiet future, lots of relaxation and music. But why do we need music in our lives? Why do we need it? Really need it?
Well, the Serenade for Music, the Vaughan Williams piece, which I can never remember well enough to quote the whole thing. Basic idea being that the man who hath no music in himself is not to be trusted. Beware of such a man, he's evil at heart and so forth. If there's no music in his soul, then it becomes a difficult thing to find out what his soul is and what that's all about. But I think that's Shakespeare, and that's as good as it comes, so why not?
Yeah. Liz?
Well, music often leads to just wonderful interpersonal relationships or wonderful travel and seeing the world. And this is not necessarily just the music, but it brings people together from every possible country and culture. And I was lucky enough to go on some tours with the New York Chamber Soloists, and you really notice that music can unite a group that otherwise might not talk about anything else, but music is a unifying factor.
Yeah, well, sure. As they say, wine women in song or wine men in song, Thank you for all the music you have brought to our part of Vermont. May the future bring you great happiness and time together. And thank you for coming today. And thank you for joining us on Conversations with Kay.